Some really interesting stuff about using ChatGPT ethically,
Yeah.
specifically in academics.
Yeah.
And we have this document that you sent titled "To Use ChatGPT Ethically." Now, that'd be really fun to kind of go through this
Absolutely.
and see what we can uncover. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting is how the document frames ChatGPT as a learning aid,
Yeah.
right? It's really emphasizing that this is a tool to help enhance what you're already doing, not to replace it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinction.
Oh, absolutely.
Because so often, people are afraid of this technology and say, oh, it's going to, get rid of writers or it's going to get rid of artists.
Right.
But that's not really the point.
It's not, it's like I was saying before, it's like having a really smart study buddy
Yeah.
that can you know, break things down for you or help you, come up with ideas that you maybe didn't think of, but it's not going to do the work for you.
Yeah, and that's exactly where this document's guidelines about following academic policies and being transparent with instructors come in.
Yeah.
Right. If your school has specific rules about AI use, then those still apply.
Of course.
And if you're using ChatGPT in a way that's allowed, being open about it with your teacher really builds trust.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's super important.
Just make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that kind of leads us to the next point that I found really interesting, which was the whole verification and critical thinking aspect. It's
Yeah.
like, I think a lot of times people think that technology is going to give us the right answer,
Right.
but that's not always the case.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
easy to kind of fall into the trap of thinking that anything that this AI spits out is going to be 100% accurate.
Right.
But ChatGPT doesn't really think in the same way that humans do.
Yeah.
It's a language model, and it's trained on this massive amount of data, but that data can have bias in it, can have inaccuracies, and so it's really important to double-check the information that's given to you.
Especially in areas like science and history,
Right.
where things are really, fact-based.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine, if you were writing a paper on a historical event and you just took everything ChatGPT said as gospel truth,
Yeah.
you could end up with a very skewed and inaccurate picture.
Yeah.
So it's always good to, cross-reference with reliable sources and do your own research to make sure you're getting the full story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super important. And it's interesting too, because you were mentioning earlier that ChatGPT can be really useful for exploring different perspectives.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're writing a paper, about, I don't know, the impact of social media on teenagers or whatever.
Right.
You can ask ChatGPT, what are some arguments for and against, the use of social media? And it can really help you uncover viewpoints that maybe you hadn't considered before.
Right.
And I think that can lead to a much more, nuanced and well-rounded understanding of any topic.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you can broaden your research, horizons by using it.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is, like you said, to then critically evaluate that information.
Exactly.
Take it with a grain of salt and really think it through.
Yeah, you can't just blindly accept everything it says.
No, for sure. And I think that kind of takes us to the next section in the document, too, about the whole writing and assignments.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty clear.
Right.
They're basically saying hey, look, don't use this to write your whole essay for you.
Exactly.
Or don't use this to, write a whole answer for you.
It's funny because people often ask me, well, how do I know if I'm crossing the line?
Yeah.
Right? How do I know if I'm misusing it? And I think a good analogy is the difference between getting help from a tutor
Yeah.
and having someone else take the test for you. Right. One is about, helping you learn and grow. The other is about circumventing the whole process.
Totally. Yeah. And speaking of working with others,
Yeah.
How does all this apply to group projects?
That's a great question. And I think it's super relevant because, so much of what we do in school now is collaborative.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to group work, open communication about AI use is absolutely essential.
Right.
If one member of the team wants to use ChatGPT to brainstorm ideas, everyone needs to be on board with that.
Yeah.
It's about making sure everyone understands the ethical boundaries and that the work that's ultimately submitted really represents the group's collective effort.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing to remember because, like we were saying earlier, it's all about acknowledging AI assistance when it's being used.
Yeah.
And this document talks about, being upfront about using ChatGPT when it's required by instructors or in, project guidelines. And why is that so important?
I think it really boils down to respect. Respect for the learning process, respect for your instructors, and respect for your own academic integrity.
Yeah.
Being transparent about how you've used these tools shows that you're engaging in the learning process honestly and ethically.
Yeah. And, it's funny because there are so many, like, positive ways that these tools can be used.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, this document does a great job of, you know, laying out these benefits. Like, what do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Well, I think when used ethically, ChatGPT can really be a game changer for students. I
Yeah.
mean, it can help you grasp those difficult concepts more easily.
Yeah.
It can help improve your research and writing skills by giving you suggestions and feedback, you
Right.
know? And ultimately, I think it can help you become a more effective and independent learner.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about a lot.
We have.
What do you think is the biggest takeaway for you?
You know, I think the biggest takeaway for me is these AI tools are evolving incredibly rapidly. And the key to navigating this new landscape is to approach them thoughtfully.
Right.
It's not just about, avoiding misuse.
Right.
It's about learning to use these tools strategically to really deepen our understanding and become, better learners and thinkers.
That's such a good point, and as this technology keeps advancing, it's up to us to use it responsibly and ethically.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been great. This has given me a lot to think about. So thank you so much for breaking this down for us.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.